Good coffee this morning. Well, good morning, everyone. Hope you had a great weekend. I did. Got to piddle with my old cars just a little bit over the weekend. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. And I'm sharing with you some thoughts in response to viewer request defining covenant eschatology. As I've suggested to you before, all three futurist views, amillennial, postmillennial, premillennial, believe in what's known as historical eschatology, the end of human history or the end of history, the end of time. Covenant eschatology, however, says the story of redemption is about the end of the old covenant age of Israel, described in highly hyperbolic, exaggerated language that was never intended to be taken literally, by the way. But be that as it may, it says that man and woman were in the garden in the presence of God. They were in the, quote, most holy place, unquote. As scholar after scholar has recognized that the garden was representative of God's temple, His presence, the most holy place. Well, due to sin, man was cast out. Down through the ages, God established His tabernacle, His temple, to represent His presence, although that barrier, that veil in the temple, represented that ongoing separation between God and man. Now, I don't know of a text that better succinctly illustrates the story of covenant eschatology than does Hebrews chapter 9, verses 6 to 10. In this text, the writer describes the Old Covenant cultus, specifically the Day of Atonement, in which the high priest offered the sacrifice, went into the most holy place, and then returned to declare the Day of Atonement was consummated, the sacrifice complete, and Israel was, quote, accepted, unquote, once again. The writer makes it abundantly clear that the Day of Atonement was typological. It was a foreshadowing of the work of Christ. Christ appeared at the end of the age to put away sin by the sacrifice of Himself. He went into the most holy place with His blood there to prepare a place for us, and He would come again the second time. Now notice what the writer does. In describing that Old Covenant cultus, he says, the Holy Spirit is indicating this, that the way into the holiest of all is not yet made manifest while the first tabernacle is still standing. Now you need to understand, he uses the present active indicatives throughout this text to indicate what was true of his day, his time. Also important to understand, when he says is still standing, doesn't mean while the temple is physically standing. It means literally still has validity. Now watch this. As long as the old covenant system had validity, there was no access back into the presence of God. There was no access back to the garden. Here we have the writer saying that the old covenant system was typological, pointing toward the time in which man would be restored to the presence of God in the most holy place. When would that be? Well, the old covenant system is what foreshadowed and typified that time. It predicted that time, but as long as the system stood valid, man could not be restored. Now watch, the writer then says, those things were imposed until the time of Reformation. So, the Old Covenant system, here's covenant. That Old Covenant system stood as the barrier between God and man. That system would stand until the time of Reformation. Well, what's the time of Reformation? It's the time of fulfillment. It's the time when man would be restored to the presence of God. It's when man could enter the most holy place. The entrance into the most holy place is the restoration of the fellowship lost in Adam. The restoration to that presence would be at the end of the old covenant system. Imposed, what was imposed? Washings, carnal ordinances, sacrifices, etc. Until the time of Reformation. Here is covenant eschatology. And we will have more to say about that and its relationship to eschatology on the flip side. Thanks for joining me for this morning's Morning Musings. We'll see you on the flip side. Hey, look, you don't want to miss the next segment, so stay tuned.